Leon Smith, finally, I tracked down that many footballers, but boy, you were a tough act to get. So I'm delighted that you've joined us on PLZ Soccer. Tennis is a passion of mine. I absolutely love it. So just to give you an insight, when I was growing up, my hero was Jimmy Connors. But if I'm looking now and I'm getting coached by one of your old coaches, Stuart, who's coaching me, I've said to him, look, I want the serve of Pete Sampras. I want the forehand of Roger. I want the backhand of Wawrinka.
You're not asking too much then.
I want Andy Murray's return, and I want Rafa's stamina. What chances have I got?
I mean, you've really gone for it with that one. Look, just keep working on it. You know, get yourself a good coach. You know, and it's going to take you some time, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Give me your ideal. Whose serve you would like? Whose forehand? Whose backhand?
That's a great question. I'll go more current. So I think serve, Nick Kyrgios. Hits his first and second serve pretty much the same speed, but he hits the spots unbelievably accurate. So I'll go with Nick Kyrgios. Backhand, Djokovic, and returns. I mean, we talk about Andy's returns, but Djokovic is nailed on the returns, just ahead. So I'll go with backhand returns with Djokovic. I think movement-wise, Yannick Sinner, incredible. His court coverage is amazing. And I'll take Alcaraz forehand. It's an absolute beast.
Yeah, that's pretty modern, that's up to date.
Well, I thought I'd keep it current.
Yeah, who was your idol when you were growing up?
Well, this is a funny one. I mean, I brought up in the south side of Glasgow, and I lived straight across the road from Clarkston Tennis Club, so that was my club. And we had, which I pretended were clay courts, okay, but they were the Blaze. You know, you fell in it, you knew about it, you'd be taking the chunks out your knee, etc. But I would buy and have all the Ivan Lendl kit. Right, and then back in the day, it was only Eurosport would show the French Open. I'd go in the clubhouse with the old groundsman back then. I'd be skipping school, not proud of it, but that's what I would do. Watch a bit of French Open, get out in the courts, pretend I was Ivan Lendl. And then you fast forward, and who's coaching Andy Murray? It was Ivan Lendl. And the first time I met him, I'm just thinking, I've got all your kit somewhere at home. I used to buy your stuff, get the racket. And you would see Ivan, and you know, back in the day, as this, you know, machine. No smiling, you know, it's very serious. Complete opposite. Absolute barrel of laughs, unbelievable warmth, great guy, brilliant company. So that was my idol, and then I got to spend a lot of time with him when he was coaching Andy.
No surprise, I look at Andy, perception and reality, and it's the same with Ivan. You know, no surprise to you probably that you picked him as a coach.
Well, yeah, I mean, Andy's someone that I think towards the end of his career people got to see a lot more. I mean, obviously there was the Amazon documentary behind the scenes about his hip surgery, etc. And he was more open versus his early years where he was a bit more guarded in press conferences, whatever, which you have to be. And there's some misconceptions about, you know, who is Andy Murray, what's he like? He's this, you know, deadpan serious, but it's the same thing. You know, when you get to know him, very generous with his time, amazing heart, very warm, very tactile, and always the joker. You know, banter, who would do the practical jokes, and when, especially in the team environments at Davis Cup, would be Andy. So and then a fit with Ivan. You know, Andy had, you know, lost numerous slam finals, was on this quest and needed someone who'd also lost, you know, his first numerous slam finals in Ivan, but then got over the line, was hugely successful. To have someone of that presence, Andy had great coaches, always had done, but knew he had to have someone that understood in the locker room and during the match. Even though he didn't give much away in the matches, Ivan, he was deadpan, wouldn't even clap, just very calm, understated, but Andy could look, and he knew, you've been through this, I get it, and I need that calmness, and I think it was a great fit.
Let's talk about you. We'll obviously discuss Andy and that Davis Cup team a little later on. I mean, as a young coach, and no disrespect to you, not what you would call a career which is going through the top echelons of tennis, suddenly you find yourself as the Davis Cup captain, the main man. I mean, it must have been, was that a shock to the system?
Yeah, it was a huge shock. I wasn't looking for it. I mean, my journey was, a club coach. I mean, I was a decent player in Scotland, low end of British as a junior, but knew I wasn't going to be professional in any way. I didn't get an education. I went to a good school, but I didn't pursue it enough. I was playing a lot of tennis, so my career was going to be into tennis coaching, and I was doing grassroots level across the west of Scotland, but I was still playing to a decent level, and I got a bit of a breakthrough in that I knew Judy Murray, who was the national coach in Scotland at the time when I was at the end of my junior days. So she knew me. I'd been doing some work in Glasgow, and she said, look, I've got my son, my youngest son, I'm coaching, but I also have a job. I need some more of my time back. I need someone to do his individual work and start travelling with him. And of course it was Andy. So I went up to Dunblane, Bridge of Allen, Stirling, and we got on great. I think I was more like a big cousin type thing. I dyed hair, had an earring in. I was maybe good company for him. I could hit the ball well with him, just about, until he started obviously beating me pretty soon after that. But and I was prepared to travel and learn. So I went on this journey with Andy in his teenage years, and it was great. I was sitting through matches when he was 14 years old and he's playing Novak Djokovic, or Del Potro and Tsonga and everyone, Rafa. I'm getting to see everything. And Judy really wrapped a lot of support around me to learn through in my early 20s.
You say learn, did you then start to study intensely what you needed to do to try and enhance Andy Murray?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Andy was an amazing player. So the role was really to make sure his motivation was good, do the right things on the court, maximise your time, because back then he probably didn't enjoy the training side as much as the competing side. So you're trying to max out the hour and a half you've got in the court with him, so it was good quality, but he wasn't someone to do 3 hours back then. That changed a lot. But what Judy was really great with was putting me with very experienced people, top international coaches. She would send me and Andy over to Paris to see a guy, Bob Brett, and spend a weekend learning. I was obviously going to all the tournaments, mixing with other coaches, but she put a lot round. And your job as a young coach, you can screw it up by not learning and not having the right attitude, because you can't, in my situation, you say I wasn't a top player, so you can't rely on tales from the tour. A lot of people can get away with that. I couldn't get away with that, so I had to learn my trade, which I think is a good thing. And you do see parallels to that in the football world. You see quite a range of mix, don't you, between ones that have been former players and some that haven't. I do think there's always an advantage having had played, if you can. There's no doubt about that, because you have the feel of it as well as the knowledge. But I was with Andy right through until I was like 17, 18 years old. When he went to Spain to train at sort of 15, 16, Judy would send me over there. So he had someone that he was used to, and I was still travelling with him.
Do you think that was important, because you might play down your coaching and the level that he was aspiring to, but do you think it was important that obviously you've got that connection, you're down to earth, you're giving him that feeling of almost staying grounded?
Yeah, I think tennis in its nature, it's not a team environment. So typically if you're traveling with a player, it's not like you'll come in and give a team talk or do a coaching session. You are getting up, having breakfast, you do the session, you're in the car together, it's one-on-one, you'll have lunch, you have dinner, and repeat, rinse and repeat. So having someone that's familiar, and importantly, you need to have someone that you get on with, but also that you can trust. You've got your inner circle. You're not bouncing off your teammates and being able to chat to someone else. So it has to have that sort of continuity is important, whilst then bringing in people that have different expertise, different knowledge. So I went through with Andy in that period, finished when he was like 17 years old. He needed something else for sure. And then went on to, had coaches like Brad Gilbert, and then he went and had Miles McLagan, he had Alex Correccia involved, and of course he's had a number of great coaches. We talked about Ivan. My route then went into working with the LTA, which is the governing body, Lawn Tennis Association, almost 20 years ago now after that, off the back of, sometimes it's powered by association, having worked with Andy, who became one of the world's best juniors. Obviously started to make moves at 17 in the pro game as well. And then I was given an opportunity by the LTA to run their sort of boys side of the programme, a new tennis centre down in Roehampton. The National Centre was built in 2007, and I started commuting down from Edinburgh to run that side of the programme. And a few years later, I was offered the job in 2010 to do Davis Cup captaincy and run the whole of the men's side of the programme. And the Davis Cup was certainly a surprise. I mean, you think of the people that have done it in the past, whether it's Jeremy Bates, John Lloyd was the captain just before I took over. You had people like Greg Grzycki around, who's obviously keen for the job, and Roger Draper, whose son Jack now is number 6 in the world, was the CEO at the time, and pursued me to do the role. We were chatting earlier, and I actually turned it down when I was first asked. I think it was fear of what the public perception would be, a bit of doubt around whether I was the right person. But I talked to people like Judy at the time, and she recognised where the team was. It dropped really far down and internationally, down to number 44 in the world rankings. For a Grand Slam nation, we have Wimbledon, that's not where the team needed to be. And she said, look, you're a coach, and so go coach the team. Don't rely on your playing days, rely on your coaching, your personality, your analysis. And quite often when you haven't been a top player, you've got to be aware of that. So you have to play to your other strengths and understand that if I'm going to sell you something, it's not because I stood out in the centre court at Wimbledon on finals day. I've got to come with a lot of research, a lot of data, bring the right people in around me as well who've got more experience, other support coaches that are going to be in the team.
You're telling me you're basically an Arrigo Sacchi or a Jose Mourinho.
It'd be nice to have their career, that's for sure. But I think that's the thing. You know your strengths, so you've got to surround yourself with the gaps that you've got. 2010 started that journey. 5 years later, we lifted the World Cup of tennis.
I'll take you off at a tangent. No surprise, I don't like John Lloyd because obviously he married my childhood sweetheart and Chris Evert.
Glad you've got over that.
Yeah, I've come to terms with it. But I want to talk about the great highs for you. I mean, you obviously very self-deprecating on certain things that you qualities you have, things that you maybe don't have, what you brought to the table. But what you were able to bring was, sometimes, as I said to you prior to starting the interview, Gordon Strachan said, sometimes better being a lucky manager than a good manager. Sometimes you wait, and that little sliding doors moment, the window comes where suddenly you've got a crop of people that you have to provide the glue for. And it takes me nicely to 2015. I mean, there was a build-up where possibly you could see the potential of the Davis Cup team. But when you look at Andy Murray's career, when you look at Jamie Murray, one of the best doubles players in the world, when you look at the emerging talent that was around it and some who were able to step up to the plate, 2015 is just, it's reaching the mountaintop. I mean, you've etched yourself in history. How do you feel about it? What are your memories of it?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Britain hadn't won it in 79 years. You've got to be honest, if we didn't have Andy Murray, you wouldn't win it. But there was a journey for 5 years leading into that with a team of players who were underperforming. They were ranked like 250 in the world, 200 in the world, and we had to beat teams that had top 50, top 30 players minus Andy in the team to get to the stage where we could win the competition. I won't go into the format because it's quite complicated, but you have to get to the World Cup group, which is your top 16 nations, and we had dropped way down. And we had to build to get back to that. A lot of the times without Andy, and that was one of the key things when I was speaking to Andy in the years before we won it, was he had his goals to achieve in his career. He's one of the top players in the world, but he hadn't won a slam, and that was going to be his focus, and that was right. I spoke to Ivan Lendo's coach at the time, said, look, he'll come in at the right time, and Andy said, look, others have to step up as well now, and I think that included me as well, as captain and coach. And we did, and other players played an unbelievable part in this. James Ward, Dan Evans, we had a whole bunch of doubles players, whether it was Jamie Murray and a raft of others. Kyle Edmund was in the team as well at one point. And they stepped up, and then Andy came in knowing that, yes, it's going to be needing his leadership on the court, but others were capable of doing something, and none more so in the year we won it. We played USA at the Emirates Arena in Glasgow. Amazing atmosphere, by the way. I mean, Andy hadn't been in Scotland for a number of years, and the place was just absolutely rocking. I mean, one of our players, doubles player called Dom Inglot, was working the court, and he said my legs were shaking. The noise, you couldn't hear anything. You go to, football's played outdoors, and you go in an indoor arena with 10,000 people, the noise just reverberates, and it's mental. And
I
it was
always
great.
thought that event that day had the feeling of what I call Monday at Wimbledon, when they just sell tickets to everybody.
Yeah,
and anybody.
it's been a rain.
Yeah,
it was. The proper fans were in. They were desperate to see Andy and Jamie as well. But we kicked off that Friday night. You get James Ward, who was ranked 200 and something at the time, playing a top 20 player in John Isner. He finds himself 2 sets down. Ends up, 11 o'clock at night, he's won 15-13 in the fifth. And, and Andy sent out a tweet afterwards saying, right, it's time to run about the streets of Glasgow naked. It's like, it was just one of those moments. But everyone started to step up. And of course that motivates Andy. And Andy, he's a brilliant team player. He wants everyone to do well. And that year, we beat US. We didn't have an easy route. We beat USA, then we beat France. Andy was unbelievable against France in the quarterfinals. He'd lost at Wimbledon. He came straight on to Queen's the week after. He easily could have skipped that, but he was out there. And Andy's play. This is best of 5 sets. The format's changed now to best of 3. It's kinder on the body. Andy was that year playing best of 5 sets. He was playing Friday best of 5 sets, Saturday a best of 5 set doubles, Sunday best of 5 set singles. You think about that.
It's incredible.
You think about that routine that you're going through with your body and your mind. And so we got through France. Then we came back to Glasgow in the semi-finals, played Leighton Hewitt's Australia. Doubles match. I talk about atmospheres. For me, that was the number one atmosphere we played in. It was Andy and Jamie playing in Scotland. You can't write the script. Both went on the year after to be both number one in the world at the same time in different disciplines. One in singles, one in doubles, from Dunblane. You've got to be kidding me. It's unbelievable what happened. They played against Leighton Hewitt and a guy called Sam Groth, who, interestingly, was the world's fastest server. And they won in 5 sets. Andy wins both his singles, and we go through to the final. We played Belgium away. It would have been nice to have a home final, but we were away in Ghent.
Did you think you could win?
Yeah, once we'd beaten Australia, I think all those were 50-50s against USA, France, Australia. Could have gone either way. And then we were probably favourites against Belgium. And they had David Goffin, who was top 20 at the time, good player, but we had Andy, and doubles would have been favourite. But anything can happen. It was on a clay court. You talk about commitment to the team, but Andy was in ATP Tour finals at the O2 that year, and we were playing in the finals on clay the week after. And Andy's commitment was unbelievable. He was practicing on clay during the ATP Tour finals and then playing his matches on an indoor hard court. We went out, and it was, we had huge away fans. It was brilliant atmosphere. And Andy's playing Goffin to win it on the Sunday. The way he won it, the match point, where it's a famous clip. He hits, it's just typical Andy. He's scrapping around. He's defending one side of the court to the other. Goffin attacks him on the backhand side. And Andy, even though he's absolutely exhausted, knackered, has been chasing every single ball, has the clarity of thought in that moment to hit a backhand topspin lob winner, and I darted off my chair. I never sprinted so fast to go and get him, and it was one of the best feelings. I think, again, going back to tennis as an individual sport, obviously Andy's hit the peaks. He's won Wimbledon, US Open, Olympic golds, but to do it as a team, go down was one of the most amazing feelings for him, getting lifted above from your teammates, which you don't get in an individual sport. The sort of football scenes that we would have had. Yeah, it was amazing.
But what about you? Did you realise the enormity of what you had achieved in your role as a captain? You said 79 years. We waited 77 for Andy to win Wimbledon, but 79 years, you're the captain. Do you sometimes look back and think, wow, that is tremendous, or are you always constantly thinking, got to look ahead?
Yeah, it's important. At the time, obviously, things happen so quickly, but there's nice moments that happen off the back of that. It's our World Cup. It's a big moment in 70. So, we got the BBC Sports Personality Team of the Year. Andy got the individual one that year. We all flew the team over to Belfast. And I was absolutely crapping myself, doing this speech, and I've got Andy in my ear the whole night, just wanting me to fail. He just wants me to screw up the speech. It's live, and you're like, come on, just get through it. you know, we go to Downing Street and we do all these things, and I was very fortunate. I got an OBE the following year off the back of it, which is amazing to take your parents down. So there's a lot of things, but you know, we're 10 years on now, and you don't think about it that much. You think you do. You maybe have the video on loop at home, but you don't. But it's nice to, you know, chats like this where you go back and start thinking about it. You know, and very proud of it. But at the same time, you have to then move forwards. And you know, again, we were talking earlier about, you know, the freshness that you need. It's 15 years I've now done the captaincy of the team. It's a long time, but that freshness comes from, you know, I talked to you, Brendan Rodgers' comments about that last week. You know, it's either the manager or it's players that come in to keep that freshness. You know, I've still been there 15 years, and there's other players that come in. You know, we've had Cam Norrie come into the team, who got to number 8 in the world. We had Kyle Edmund, who got to 14 in the world, come in. We've had more recently Jack Draper come in, who's now 6th in the world. So that keeps the freshness going, and you've got to keep moving forward.
Can we reach the mountaintop again?
I think it's a challenge. It's about getting your best team out, you know, and the tennis calendar is so crammed, and I think, you know, people who don't follow tennis as closely compared to football is, yes, there's home and away matches, but you're pretty much at home at night. You're training during the week. Tennis, you know, you are, as a player, away sort of 35, 40 weeks really of travel. By the time you travel somewhere to play, it's always global. You're moving country to country, changing surfaces. You have to go and get used to the environment. So you're not home a lot. So then you're asking them to go and commit to Davis Cup, which I always thought if they could look at the format and make it more like Ryder Cup and do it every 2 years, try and give the players a bit of a breathing and stagger the amount of commitment for it, would be a good move. But you know, it's not easy finding it. And so it's again, it's like Scotland national team. You need your best players, and if you don't have your best players, it's going to be difficult. And that's, you're trying to find that window and that moment to get your best players to commit and play.
Tell me about Andy. He likes pranks. Can you think of a prank that you've played on him that you thought, yeah, dancer, you've got him?
He's normally one giving it out. I mean, he driving around Naples one time. You've been to Naples? I'm sure you've been to Napoli for one of the matches. I mean, it's chaos on the streets,
Driving.
No, I mean,
nobody claims for a bump on the car.
And you don't know what's going on out there either, you know, so you're kind of watching your back a little bit. I was minding my own business, and we also got security going to the thing, and we're in the traffic jam. I must have been on my phone or something like that. And the next thing, my window goes bang, like this. And of course, Andy's got out the car in the back there, noticed my head's down, and he's just thumped the car, get out. Things like that, you know. But I think there was one time in Davis Cup, I don't think it was Andy, it was someone else. I was in a hotel room, and you know, you get used to all your stuff and everything's there. I walked in the hotel room, think, I've got the wrong room, but I've obviously used my key card, so it can't be. But I've walked in, I'm in someone else's room. I looked over and my balcony door's open. Someone's managed to get in, one of the players, and they have turned everything to the other side. It's unbelievable. The bed, the TV where it was, everything's been flipped over. And I've turned around the corridor, they're all like pointing, laughing at me.
It takes a lot of planning.
Yeah, but that's where it's important, the team stuff. And I envy football that way, because you've got your team, and your training should be fun. It should be that. I mean, Pep Guardiola said a great thing a number of years ago about the stress and the responsibility that players have on match day. It's stressful.
Yeah.
So enjoy your training. Of course you still work hard, but enjoy the banter, enjoy the lunch with your mates, enjoy that side of it. In tennis, it's tough to replicate that, because your practices, it's you.
Yeah.
You know, maybe one other player that you bring in, or it's the coach. You don't have that bouncing off all the time. That's where it's really important. You know, we have it a bit at the Olympics, and we have it at Davis Cup in the team event, and you've got to savour those. You've got to savour that.
What's so special about him on the court and off the court? Yeah,
I mean, you could sit for days, weeks, and end talking about him. I mean, he's given a lot to others. You know, that's the thing. Himself on the, like, if you watch him training, his dedication, it's off the charts. I mean, he'll be the first in the building, last to leave. He's meticulous. He's very analytical, extremely analytical. I mean, you have to really. I always found, okay, I wasn't his personal coach later through his career, but you're still doing Olympics, you're doing Davis Cups. I helped out on tour on a number of weeks when his coaches need a week off. So, and you have to bring your A game, because he, you know, the night before the match would expect a really good dossier on his opponent, you know, backed up by obviously all Hawkeye data, video, examples, etc., and a really good conversation around it. So you have to be very prepared for that. Practice court, practiced hard, practiced with a lot of focus, high expectations. I think that's important because he raises everyone's level, and you have to go with them on that. He had a lot of, you know, difficulties with his body, well reported, and that was a big challenge for him, and therefore his days became a lot longer than others that maybe wouldn't have. The bit of bad luck that he had with his injuries. You know, from a young age, you know, he had a knee when he was like 17, took him out for 6 months, he had a back injury, sort of 2012, 2013. So his days were long.
Yeah, I've spent millions of days waiting up sometimes through the night, watching him in tournaments, willing him to win, you know, that first Grand Slam, obviously US Open, but you just want him to do so well. I wonder if he had, you know, you got him to a certain point. I wonder if he had a specific coach early on, maybe an Ivan Lendl earlier in his career. Do you think he would have won even more majors? I mean, he was in finals 5 or 6 times where he came up against, the only people that were beating him were the other top
well,
three.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Generation he's in.
Yeah.
You'll never repeat that. You'll never repeat that generation.
Yeah.
So Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, even Wawrinka.
Yep.
And Andy, but those other three, that's who you're. Not just final. You have to beat one of them in the semis, then you got to face another in the final. I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And yet, he got to number 1. He won his slams. He won 2 Olympic golds, and he won Davis Cup. And the ATP Masters title. He's one of the all-time record holders in terms of on the list.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what he achieved through that generation, and I think that's, you know, people say, oh, wouldn't it have been great? If you ask him that, No, it's not. It's about, I managed to do it during that generation. And I think that's really important. You know, 10 years previous, would he have won more? Yeah, probably. Would you get the same satisfaction from managing to do it whilst Federer, Djokovic and Nadal are your peers? No, I don't think so. It pushed him to new levels. It's a greater achievement doing it during that generation of players. And I think, that, you know, you talk about what's he like. I mean, I talk about the practice, the training, but ultimately it's you get success on the match court, don't you? And that's where that is him. A warrior, never give up. Never mind never give up in a match, never give up during the point. You give a lesson to young players, doesn't matter what sport, you chase that ball down. You know, it doesn't matter. 99 times out of 100, he wouldn't win some of the points, but he still made himself chase the ball right out by the advertising boards, just to get his racket on it, just for them to play one more ball. Because you never know, you might win that point.
Australian Open. Classic example.
It is, and he would chase it down, and it's a great example that way, but also, I always thought it was really interesting, and he talked about this, but again, probably talked about it more openly towards the end of his career, when you tend to open up a little bit more, was like, he recognised he didn't hit the ball as hard as Rafa or Djokovic, and maybe didn't have the same, like Roger Federer's a once in a lifetime skill set, but he recognised that and accepted it. So he did the other things more. He trained harder. He looked tactically more, and I think that was really interesting. That he knew, even though he was brilliant, you know, he's better than all the rest. But those three maybe had something else. That's why they won so many slams. But how do I do that? Is through my dedication, my speed, my endurance, and my brain. And his brain was amazing. You know, the way he would unpick, because tennis isn't all about hitting winners. That's brilliant if you've got a 150 mile an hour serve. A lot of it is, can I make you, Peter, miss?
Yeah.
You know, and he made people miss by where he put the ball, understanding their weaknesses, you know, where to serve, and his anticipation, knowing where they were going to hit the ball. That bit was for me, a genius.
I got his humour. I loved his humour. I mean, the fact that the UK, had him as this droll guy. Maybe it's because my hero was Kenny Dalglish, and I absolutely love Kenny's humour. And that dry kind of a one-liner that just loses people. And with Andy, off the court, I mean, you say he's a prankster and everything like that, and you've mentioned the other qualities, the warmth of it. So I got that. I think the only time the UK tapped into him really was when he had the emotion of losing to Roger at Wimbledon.
Yeah, it was a big moment, that one. He let it all out there. And everyone, cause I remember that match and sitting there in the player box, and crowd was 50-50, and you're thinking, hang on, we're playing in the UK here, it's not all be for Andy pretty much, apart from some Federer fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it changed after that. The whole crowd see how much this hurt him, how much he wants it for himself, but also for Britain. And
did you cry that day?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can't not. I cried a lot of times in his matches. I mean, they're never straightforward. They're emotional roller coaster. Yeah. There wasn't that many straightforward matches. And when you get to know someone who's, I've known him since a young lad, so you've got that emotional attachment, and then also because you see what they're doing to try and achieve something, and it's not been straightforward. And it's monumental to beat a Federer, a Nadal, a Djokovic. It's monumental. But it changed after that. The whole wave of support was huge, and the Olympics in London was massive. It was massive. That also changed.
Yeah.
That the disappointment he had from that to then go and win the gold at the Olympics was huge, and it was amazing. I mean, seeing Wimbledon was completely transformed from the traditions of, very few advertising boards, anything. Suddenly it was just like draped in flags. Non-tennis fans coming in. The atmosphere was mental, and for him to win that off the back of losing the Wimbledon final, it was amazing. That set it on, and then obviously US Open quick after that. It was amazing how just the Olympics was a key point.
His legacy. Do you see it? You have got your tentacles all across British tennis and Scottish tennis. Do you see the legacy of Andy Murray bearing fruit?
Yeah, there's no doubt that one comes from people realising it can be done. That's always important, because otherwise what are you achieving? Someone from Dunblane, someone from Scotland, someone from the UK, this can be done. But also his legacy with the current crop of players is because I go back to his generosity. He gave a lot of time. He would take a lot of the emerging players when he used to have a place in Miami. He'd bring them out for his pre-season, put them up in his house, in his apartment, train with them, spend the whole time with them. And he's very open. If anyone wants a conversation with Andy, they can have a conversation with Andy. So that generosity of how to be and how to give back is a really important quality to have.
You, as someone who has to have the vision and look at coaching and look at the youngsters coming through, for me, I came from a council estate where there was no tennis courts for us. If you had to go somewhere, it would be money that you just couldn't afford. Luckily, as a council house, we had a huge back garden, so we used to tie the rope, make up a net, and me and my mates would play on the grass out in the back. So we loved it. But I wonder, what are you doing? What's in place to expand tennis, to give us more of a group of youngsters to choose from, to make it more accessible? Is there constant work that you're going through?
Honestly, the LTA is like there's no doubt tennis, when you get good at it, it becomes expensive because it's an individual sport. But the accessibility, for me, it's one of the best sports. It's very, very cheap to play when you want to go and play. You join a club membership, junior membership is pittance. You probably get a junior membership for 30, 40 quid a year.
Yeah.
And you can play as much as you want. Park courts, massive investment in the last 3 years in park courts, opened it up, huge transformation.
Is there enough marketing to get people to be aware of that?
Well, I think that's why you need role models.
Yeah.
And that's why, I take it back to, I work for the LTA, but we've got a big grass court season. Queen's, Eastbourne, Wimbledon itself, that gets eyes. And then when you have Brits doing well, it creates more noise, creates more stories. We've got to tell that story really, really well. And especially the diversity of the players we've got. They all come from different backgrounds, different areas of the country. It's a diverse group. I talked earlier before we came on, you got one player that's just broken through from Edinburgh. He's from Buxton, Edinburgh. He got a scholarship to go to a school in Edinburgh, went to a scholarship in the States called Jacob Fernley. He's now 65 in the world. We've got to tell that story to say, look, yeah, there's ways, there's different paths to come into this. But tennis is very accessible when you want to go and play. Go and join a local club, get to a park court and go play. Are you getting it into more schools and more areas where you wouldn't normally get it into? Yeah. The reason I say that is because my nephew was headmaster of Liberton, and they fought to try and get help to get tennis courts there. So suddenly people at school suddenly can go and play tennis at the school. Yeah, and that's you did your mock Wimbledon and your grass behind your council flats, but you don't need a tennis court. Any indoor sports hall you can convert it. So schools is a program called LTA Youth, and that is giving all the education for free into all the schools nationwide, and equipment, rackets, balls, pop-up nets. Schools can apply. They can get the kit, they can get the educational resources, so any of the teachers, PE teachers, other teachers can go in and actually do the basics, how to set up, because it's not easy when you get 20 kids trying to play tennis, but how to set it up, what exercises to do, how do you make it a safe space to go and play and start enjoying it, especially the equipment. You're obviously pretty good at tennis, you and Ruffy, you guys play good tennis, but if you haven't played tennis before, it's not that easy. Yeah. You can pick up a football and kick it around and think you're half decent when you're probably not, but you feel you can play. With tennis, you give you a tennis racket and a yellow ball. It sails all over the place. You spend half your time picking the ball up from the side of the fence. Yeah. So getting the right equipment, balls that don't bounce as high, slightly smaller rackets, all that sort of equipment makes it much easier for the kids to enjoy the sport and make it a bit easier. Yeah, the downside of that though is when I first played Ruffy at singles, he cuffed me 6-love, 6-love. You can't let that happen. So what happened was I had a wee bit of Andy Murray in me, a small bit, and I said, there's no way I'm letting him hammer me 6-love, 6-love. So I've spent a fortune with your coach. He won't play me at singles anymore. But yeah, I had to. You not had any rematches? He won't play me anymore because I beat him. But you play doubles. You play doubles together. I play doubles together with him, which is good. You mentioned there something about, and again, the Murray family is very intrinsically linked with you. You mentioned obviously Judy and the pathway that she helped you with along the way. I don't know if the word is hacked off with it, but I get quite miffed at the attempt that she was trying to get the Dunblane, the tennis centre. Would you like to see her go back and readdress that and try and get it going again? Because I think that would be a tremendous legacy of a venue. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the whole ins and outs of it, but it was a tough journey for Judy, that one, because she put a lot of time and effort, money into it as well. And I think having a place where you can stamp it as the Murray legacy, because at the end of the day, it's not just Andy, it's Judy and it's Jamie. And they've been absolutely massive, not just for Scottish tennis, for British tennis and for global tennis. So to have somewhere where the Murray legacy, whether that's, from a community point of view, to recognise what they achieved for the up and coming players, you could have an academy. So I think whether it's there or somewhere else or in some other form, you can't forget Murray, the legacy, as a brand, as something that people can aspire to is really important. To keep that alive for generations to come is going to be important. Would you like her to take up the baton again to try and reignite it? Well, that's going to be up to her. I mean, she's busy with a number of projects. I hope, I'm sure she's enjoying her own life now as well. She's taken up golf. So, she's got other things, but she's still got a burning desire. I mean, I've never met someone with a work ethic like Judy Murray. I mean, that's something you talk about, what you learn from someone, you can't escape work ethic, and she's got that in abundance, so, but she'd need help with it. Yeah, Andy's got a 5-star hotel. I certainly didn't see him coaching Novak Djokovic, did you? That came out of left field. Do you think he'll come back to coaching or have a part to play
in British tennis in the future, maybe as he gets older?
I hope so, and I hope in the near future, because Novak's not going to keep going forever, at 37 years old. But look, it's obviously a great opportunity for Andy to go and work with the greatest of all time, and someone that's been one of his arch rivals, so many battles. You can see it from Novak's point of view, to go, look, I don't think there's anyone that knows me better than you. You've played me, you've beaten me, I've beaten you. Tell me what it is that I do really well and what I can do better. So I can see it that way. And then from Andy's side, there's got to be a huge amount of curiosity. Say, how the hell did you manage to do this for so long and you're still going? Let me have a little look inside your world, because I've seen you from across the net, I've seen you in the locker rooms, but I haven't seen what else goes on. So I think that's going to be very interesting for Andy to have a little look under the bonnet and go, right, what was I missing a little bit?
Yeah.
What can I learn from that? But I think the biggest thing, we want him working in British tennis, with British players, male, female teams, whatever it might be. And I now that he's in coaching, I didn't think he'd coach so quickly. He's got a big family, but he's on the road, not all the time, but he's on the road quite a bit now in Novak. So let's bring him a bit closer to home would be good.
Okay, I'm going to finish with quick fire questions for you. Give me your top 5 favourite players in tennis, not necessarily the greatest, but your top 5 favourite players that you think, I absolutely love watching him or her.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go Andy because that's obvious. I like watching Alcaraz because he is an exciting brand of tennis, and okay, he's already got to the top, but I think he prioritises entertaining a little bit more than others, to the frustration of his coach sometimes. So I like the way his variety in the game. I used to absolutely love watching Juan Martín del Potro. I mean, I've been coached to 2 matches, which were maybe the 2 up there with the best of all time, was Andy beating Del Potro in the Rio Olympic final.
Phenomenal.
And then months later, Delpo, as he was called, getting the better of Andy in our Davis Cup in 2016. I thought we were going to win it 2 years in a row, in a 5-set, 5-hour match in Glasgow. But I used to love watching Del Potro play. Ivan Lendl for sure. I used to love watching him. As I mentioned before, McEnroe, 100%. You talk about excitement, entertainment, brand of tennis, off court. That was great. And now I have to say Jack Draper, because one, it's important we have a British player at the very top of the game, and he is at the top at number 6 in the world, and there's more to come, but I think he is playing an exciting brand of tennis. I think, he absolutely clubs the ball, he's brave, so I'll go with those. Okay, your favourite idol from football? That's a good one. I mean, look, as you know, I'm a Celtic fan. We haven't talked enough about football, actually. I'd love to talk more. You could test my knowledge, but current-wise, I love Callum McGregor. I think he's got all the qualities you want, plays every match, good leader, amazing awareness. I loved Henrik Larsson, obviously. Back when I was very young, he wasn't at Celtic at the time, Kenny Dalglish for sure. I went to the game where he scored against Spain at Hampden. I always loved that. Do you have a game that sticks in your mind? That one. I mean, I always remember the Spain game, so it was probably one of my earlier ones, and I absolutely loved that. I took my youngest son to his first Old Firm match recently, and that for me was a nice moment where it's the next generation. I'm not saying I've forced him into Celtic, but his bedroom is wallpapered Celtic. So that was a nice moment for me. I think the European run to Seville, that run was brilliant to watch and follow. Absolutely loved that. So yeah, those are some of the quick memories. Yeah, good games, good memories, good players. I just want to get some crazy questions to you. This one is, you are in the car, you've got to take 3 famous people, living or dead. So who are the 3? And what's the song on the radio that you're listening to that you won't get sick of in it, and you're going to a concert? Oh, so it's the ultimate concert. Oh, that's a tough one. I think just for pure value, because I'd love to ask the question, this is very current, but I would take Donald Trump. I mean, I'm obsessed with news, right? And political news. I watch a lot, and it's madness. And I would just love to have time just to really, or just ask why, because it fascinates me.
Yep.
So I would take Donald. I would take, you said alive or dead, I would take Jock Stein. I'd love to know what that was like, having those players from that radius around the club and making greatness. I think that would be a fascinating journey just to know, especially early days of leadership like that, where it wasn't the thing talked about a lot, where it is now. I think, so I'd have to I'll take Jock. Final one, God, it's a difficult one. I mean, Ricky Gervais to lighten the mood, you know, and he would then be able to take the absolute piss out of Donald Trump and it'd go back and forwards. So that's a strange mix, isn't it? I'll take Ricky Gervais. I find him absolutely hilarious. I love his stuff, so I'll take Ricky Gervais.
And Jock would tap you on the shoulder and say, "Is there any chance you could let Donald out midway
Yeah,
through Route 66?
I think he would sort it out, wouldn't he? You know, there'd be no messing.
And the song?
I'm not much of a music person, so it's going to be difficult. That in the concert, I mean, this is going to sound. I've got podcasts on when I'm in the car. We'll put PLZ Soccer on actually and see what they think of it.
I'm happy with that. That's even better.
Is that all right?
I couldn't have made that better.
I'm a strange one anyway. I listen to podcasts, a couple of them. I won't obviously go into the other ones I listen to, but I do listen to yours extensively. And if I'm away traveling, you know, I do a lot of running, and that's my thing. Doesn't matter if I'm in Australia, I was in Japan, I've got you on. That's my thing. I am on it. I listen.
Yeah, the amount of expats when we went to the Euros, the amount of expats from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, America, who have basically, we ran into them and they said, we listen to it, we watch it, we get our football kick from it, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Got to stay humble on it and say, great, we've got to do things right, but what do we need to do better? It's very much like you do as a coach as well. I'd be remiss of me just before we finish to talk about female tennis, because you know, I waited up. Raducanu was an unbelievable run for her. Is there another major in her?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's tough competition out there, but importantly, can she get back to, you know, top 10 level, which then means that you're very much in the running to win a major? Yes. I mean, we were talking before, I think you can't fluke what she did. It will never happen again. She was a qualifier at US Open the year she won it, and she didn't drop a set all the way through winning it. You can't fluke that. No one can prepare for what happened to her. She's still only 22, 23 years old. Best years, you know, are still ahead of her. Whether she wins another slam or not, you don't know. But she can have an unbelievable career. She looks like she's going to settle into a new coaching situation, which I think is potentially a really good one. And then she'll be back. Okay.
And to finish, the ultimate tennis question. I'm a huge Andy Murray fan. I loved watching him play. I wanted to see him win all the time. But when I look over the years, I've been obsessed with watching tennis and enjoying it. The greatest of all time. I understand the titles and I understand the battle we have in football. Generational people, you know, I'm a Pele. Yeah. I'm a Pele's the greatest of all time.
Are you sticking to Pele?
I'm sticking to Pele because you're talking about people who do things that are, you know, unheard of or ridiculous and they'll never happen again. Pele scored 2 in the World Cup final at 17 in one of the greatest Brazilian sides ever.
Yeah.
And then gets to 30 and plays in the greatest World Cup team of all time and wins it for the 3rd time. So, and he was doing things that in an era where you were booted mercilessly from pillar to post, whereas Messi is in a generation where he was better protected. There's a great argument for Maradona.
Got up every time, didn't he?
He still got up.
It's amazing. And Messi never stayed on the ground.
And his Champions League is a great argument for me to say, well, he maybe just pips Pele. It's such a fine line. And it brings me nicely to the point, which is, for me, the greatest of all time is Roger. I just loved everything about him, and you know, injuries play their part in everybody. But who's your GOAT?
I think it's Novak. I think longevity. You know, he's got the most slam titles on the men's side, so you know, but that doesn't automatically maybe give you that. But I think his longevity, his records, Yeah, I think everyone loves Roger, everyone loved Rafa, people didn't love Novak, and I think he found his way. He trumped them in the number of titles and the number of slams, and he's still going. He's still going, so I'm going to go Novak.
Yeah, I have to say, I could have probably added another hour onto this. It was well worth tracking you down, Leon.
Glad you did.
You should be very proud of your part in tennis history as well. I think we really appreciate your part in being the glue and working hard at all the things in a coaching sense, and to get you here in Edinburgh and chat to you has been brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.